Hey everyone, it's LS, and I'm here reviewing Graves, and they end up locking in Graves. And so this is interesting because Aatrox is able to be flexed mid and top, and Victor is also able to be flexed mid and top lane. Fnatic now hovering and locking in Jace, so I want to talk about something really quick. A lot of people don't know this. Phase Rush Jace is one of the strong counters against Victor up in top lane. So I tweeted out as soon as this happened. I didn't know if Fnatic knew about this, and that's why they didn't end up banning away Victor, or if they just don't think that Licorice, or if they're not that afraid of Licorice as Victor. Phase Rush Jace is one of the heavy counter, or one of the best champions that you can actually pick against top lane Victor. So it should be noted that that's actually where I thought the Jace was headed, but obviously Jace, another champion that's able to be flexible, able to go into mid or top lane. So that's going on there. Another champion that you could actually probably pick into top lane Victor would be, you have Azir and you also have Orianna. Both of those champions are going to offer more the longer that the game goes. So I don't know why we're not seeing answers like that yet. Karthus is another answer as well. Kled, yes. Anyways, moving on. Lucian and Draven banned away yet again by Fnatic. And I think that those are actually really good bans, because when you're looking at Cloud9's team composition, they have such strong champions on 1 and 2 items, and they have champions that if they end up getting advantages, it's extremely difficult to come back from. And Lucian and Draven would basically complement all of these champions perfectly right now. And there's the Xayah ban, by the way, yet again, and the Syndra ban as well. So they are not expecting the Jace to be mid lane, or they're just, maybe removing the possibility that Syndra could possibly still be picked up. Lissandra is then picked up following a Leona. So Cloud9 have the epitome of an all-in team composition. They are heavily focused on their 1 and 2 core item spikes. However, the differences in how these champions arrive at their 1 and 2 items, there is some gap. Obviously, Aatrox, his build is extremely heavy. Victor, able to be flexible with his build depending on how he wants to go with his Hex core, and then when he wants to actually start completing into his first non-Hex core item. And then Graves actually has options with either going Black Cleaver or going into Yumu's, which can all skew the gold paths and how they arrive at these things. So, with that being said, Fnatic, when they're looking at this team composition, you have to ask yourself, who's actually going to go bottom? And I think that the most realistic option is going to be Victor, and then after that, you have Lissandra. You're not going to put Aatrox down in bottom with the Leona. It doesn't make sense, and Aatrox just does not fare that well down in bottom lane as ADC. And it would be even more punishing to actually have a blue side bottom Aatrox. If you have a red side bottom Aatrox, he's able to play defensive, get shoved in underneath his turret, and then if you, I guess, have a really, really strong jungler, or for some unholy reason want Aatrox a part of your team composition, that would be the color to put him on. So I'm just going to allow the swaps to go through. Oh wait, the swaps... No, swaps have not gone through yet. I'm going to let the swaps go through. After the swaps go through, I will talk about everything. Let's get to 20 seconds. Okay, so what we're going to be having here is, I don't know how practiced Licorice actually is with Aatrox against Jace. So the Aatrox versus Jace matchup is interesting. You end up basically going 6 to 12. So in the first 2 waves, you give up 1 wave entirely, you get to level 2, and then you play the lane state from that point on. It is blue Aatrox against red side Jace, so red side Jace is able to have a longer extended lane, and then due to the nature of top lane side, as long as Brox is able to provide him vision coverage with the Scuttle Crab, and then they're able to have the River Brush and the Blasting Cone put away, a ranged champion on red side is able to bully quite hard. I talk about this with red side Victor against other matchups, although obviously red side Victor in the previous VOD review would have fared much worse against a blue side Echo or whatnot, just in case people immediately pop that into your mind. Another champion that historically you would be able to feel this on is like Teemo. Historically, if you ever wanted to ruin someone's solo queue life, red side Teemo tends to be more obnoxious than a blue side Teemo. Also, again, due to the fact that you have to invest less resources into vision control in order to be a lane bully. So that's that matchup. Graves versus Zen. This is not able to just be determined inside of this straight isolated 1v1. All of the team compositions and what Graves needs to do. He needs to alleviate pressure from the Jace up in top lane. All that he needs to do in mid lane is allow Lissandra to basically get into 6, and so really he's looking at top heavy side focus and then bottom heavy side focus. So mid lane is not going to likely be the lane that Graves wants to play in. So if you look at Summoner's Rift, there's going to be this like oval in mid lane where Graves is only going to realistically look to match or counter gank, and then he can play around the 2 Wraith camps ideally and just allow the lane to go naturally. However, it is an Azir, and so obviously you can't allow the pressure to get too extreme inside of the mid lane, and so take that for what you will. On the side of Fnatic, though, they have vastly superior scaling. Anything beyond 3 items forward is going to be Fnatic favored, with maybe the one exception being the Aatrox versus the Jace matchup, where Aatrox, if he ends up getting a sizable enough lead, or depending on where the gold is allocated on Cloud9's team composition, he actually could be a wrecking force, or a driving force in Cloud9's victory inside of a split push in the later stages of the game against the Jace. So Fnatic is looking at this game basically one of 2 ways. Either they can get advantages against Cloud9 early on, in which case there is no recovering with Cloud9's team composition. There is absolutely no way, despite the death ray, despite the AoE wave clear from Lissandra and the Q from Graves, that they can resist against Azir poke, against Jace poke, and against Sivir poke. It's way too much ammunition, and it's way too easy for Fnatic to actually just poke underneath turrets and force Cloud9 to come into them. And Cloud9 have a much heavier reliance on Leona making sure that she has her flash and her ultimate available, because without that, there's just virtually no way to actually engage for Cloud9's team comp. So if Fnatic gets ahead at the 1 item jump, there's no salvaging it for Cloud9. If Fnatic can't get ahead at 1 items or 2 items, then their goal is basically just to sustain and survive until 3 items, and then play inside of their left side or their red side jungle. So around the Baron pit where Wraiths are, red is, and then golems, if Fnatic can just turtle this, it's extremely difficult for Cloud9 to actually penetrate this part of the map outside of using Leona ultimate or having Lissandra come over a wall inside of the Fog of War and starting off an engage on Fnatic, because then you're just going to have Aatrox against Jace inside of the split push in bottom lane, and this is dependent on where is Aatrox actually standing inside of the matchup. So Fnatic has so much more flexibility and options going for them, and Cloud9's team composition relies on them getting ahead and relies on them being able to punish mistakes that Fnatic has to make in order for them to do that. Waiting for the game to start. Looks like we're having a 5-point opening for both teams yet again. We're just spreading out the map. And Reckless and Sneaky taking a little bit of a trade ends up being about even when you consider fleet footwork for Reckless. The openings for the junglers are really, really important. Now, interestingly enough, since Garen does not have the luxury of just being able to go top to bottom on Graves and constantly play a river and match gank type style on Graves, which is really good. If you have it, so imagine this. Imagine Graves had Jace and Azir. This is an entirely different playstyle. Flip the 2 junglers, and Graves can basically just go like this endlessly. He can play this side of the map over and over, control this point, and control this point. Control these 2 little drawings with vision, and then just hug your fucking jungle the entire game with match ganks and counter ganks. And Graves would have that available to him. Due to the polarizing pressure in top lane and bottom lane, he's basically tugged at from 2 angles, and then there's the oval in mid lane that we talked about that only contains the 2 Wraith camps. where obviously if Lissandra has priority or initiative, Graves can invade the Wraith camp, try to steal it away from Broxa. And then obviously if he's in close proximity to mid lane, he wants to ideally just farm his own Wraith camp. The issue is that he's getting tugged at top and bottom, and so this is one of the issues that I find inside of Cloud9's team composition. If Victor and Leona get ahead, it's very, very, very scary. So Graves ends up doing his red into his golems. He comes over and he gets that Scuttle Crab right away, and this is really good because it, gives Aatrox some sort of vision coverage. He's moving up into top lane to try to prank Whippo, and that's a pretty good prank. You can see here that, okay, so Whippo's able to come right back in, but this would be a very, very nice prank attempt, because you see the cannon minion right here, the reinforcing wave from Whippo. Had Svenskeren done a lot more damage to Whippo, you can see he's very low on mana. He still has some corrupting potions left inside of him, but it makes it very manageable for Licorice, and if Whippo doesn't have a ward available, he has to then be in constant fear of Graves, and Graves has his entire left-hand side jungle that is still available to him. There's not enough intel, obviously, so it's not like he can just go into the golems or the wraiths or anything, but now Broxa, when he's looking at this, he can count Graves' CS because he's not a caveman like St. Vicious, and he's able to basically know all of Svenskeren's camps, and he's able to completely play around that with virtually map hack for the next 2 minutes. For those of you guys that are maybe just joining a VOD review for the first time, prank is a term that stands for pressure gank. So PR from prank and then ank from gank. You know what I'm talking about? Right now, Broxa up here in top lane. And look at this. So these minions will collide right here, and if Whippo doesn't actually interrupt anything with the minions due to the proximity to Licorice's turret and the reinforcing minion wave that will come out of the Nexus, this will slowly push into Whippo and then allow him to have option to potentially freeze. Pings go down onto Broxa. And then the teleport right into the middle of the minions. I actually don't like that trade from Whippo. I don't think that he needs to do it like that. The lane was already coming into him. Looks like he wants to hold the lane a little bit more forward, so perhaps maybe to not just be instantly dove, or not dove, just instantly have the lane cracked right into the turret. Popo, you in chat? You're back? Driven, I should have said driven. So right here, this was actually a good attempt for some sort of pressure down in bottom. Red buff is coming up, and Svenskeren's going to have to path right into it. Azir is getting ahead in mid lane, but Lissandra is level 6, so Cloud9 basically has to start looking to make something happen. The problem is just like in game number 1, the jungler pick does not match up... Sorry, Jesus. The jungler pick does not match up with the laner picks. Sven now down here in bottom lane. Coming in here now to try to steal away the blue. And Brox is being able to get away with a very defensive playstyle of jungle, because all that he needs to do is grant intel to his junglers. Fnatic is able to make use of no information as information. What I mean by that is, if you can just basically see camps that Graves has been, you don't need to know where he is to know where he can go or what he can possibly do next when you consider the lane matchups. Or his laners. Sorry, misspoke. Feels really bad watching this for Sven. Bwipo's just getting really far ahead up in top lane. And now the lane is going to come back into Bwipo. And this lines up really, really, really well. Brox's proximity to top lane is really good. It can end up being a match or a counter gank. And so Brox is actually getting to do what Graves would ideally want to do. And this is why I talked about if the jungler matchup was flipped, it would be so much better for Fnatic. But there would obviously be a trade-off. You wouldn't have the melee engage and the melee peel. Oh, we're 8K viewers. Can someone take a screenshot and tweet it at me? That means that we broke the old streaming record without host. So the lane state right now in top is not able to be salvaged anymore. Oh, what? Someone in chat. I got lied to. I got you baited. Now I'm gonna cry. Twitch chat's baiting me. I need to not look at chat anymore. I'm turning you guys off. You guys are getting turned off. I'm turning the monitor off. I missed out on the game. I got debated. Now I feel bad. Alright, let's rewind a little bit. Sven trying to make something happen right now. End up finding Broxa at Gromp. First rake of the game is Cloud. Cloud9 end up getting a first kill onto Hillising. And so this is actually quite good. Sven immediately starts the Cloud Drake. And after he starts the Cloud Drake, he can fall back into his left-hand side jungle and farm out the camps. Zeyzal trying to go into mid lane to alleviate pressure, but Caps is just in way too good of a spot right now. He's impervious to anything really happening, but if they want to engage on him here, they would have to bring over Graves. Hillising comes in, just barely misses onto Jensen. They don't all commit heavy enough. Zeyzal goes onto him. That's a really nice play by Caps, knocking Zeyzal over the wall. And trades like this are not good for Cloud9 because we talk about how they need to accelerate ahead. And so investing time and resources into trying to make plays happen, especially after Fnatic just actually botched a play, is really, really bad, and they can't afford to have this happen. This is also really sad. It should be noted that Jensen has his flash up, and they have vision of Bwipo. They know that Bwipo is missing from top lane. Realistically, there's nowhere else that he should have been. You know that he just came off. He has his Yumu's. He just recalled. Where do you think he's going? I mean, you even saw him pathing down into River, and yet Jensen takes the recall spot where he does, and it's just really, really bizarre. Victor not getting as far ahead of Sivir as he would like. And Fnatic is only slightly behind in gold, and we're approaching the 15-minute mark. And this is where the first core items are going to be completed for everyone. And this is where Cloud9 would like to have found themselves with a large advantage. But what they end up finding themselves with is a Clown Drake, and without any real advantages. It should also be noted that Leona does have the kill. Fnatic just able to get away with so much right now. And this is a pretty nightmare situation. Cloud9 does have flash up on Lissandra. They have flash up on Zeyzal. These are the two playmaking champions, and they need to make something happen. But without a neutral objective on the right-hand side of the map, there's nothing to really make Fnatic fight over. And so it requires Fnatic to make a mistake. As long as they just have defensive vision inside of these areas, and then occasionally, as long as Bwipo can move the lane forward, he just gets vision right here, make sure the plant is killed off. Bwipo is the only person that can actually extend the vision to this part. So this is basically where Fnatic wants to be playing inside of. They have no reason to ever advance forward, and the onus is on Cloud9 to make something happen, and it's really, really difficult. Since Skyrim getting poked a little bit. I don't know where Zeyzal was trying to shoot that Zenith Blade. Caps did get poked down quite a lot. And now they're trying to fight over defensive vision that Fnatic's trying to establish and set up. And I like what they're doing right now. They're trying to basically pressure Caps and Reckless at all points. They've given up on top lane. They've abandoned hope up there. Bwipo ends up stealing away to blue, and that is quite important for mid lane transitions. Bwipo being forced to flash away. We take another look at mid lane. Caps was clearly trying to move over to help out Bwipo. He uses an R. They end up trading 1-for-1 in the end. And then a lot of turret damage is going to try to be done to that Azir turret. Super, super, super important to get mid lane AoE, wave clear, utility, control mages, etc. Their turrets are so crucial to take down. Victor, Azir, Old Talia is another champion, Zeroth. These are all champions that if their mid-tier 1 turrets are really healthy when you get to like the 18-20 minute mark in the game, it basically means that unless you win a team fight, you're never going to raise that mid-tier 1 turret. And it provides so much safety and coverage around mid that it ultimately ends up providing this thorn in your side when you're trying to establish any sort of control over Baron or over upcoming dragons. It just makes it so safe for the opposing team, and it's virtually impossible to crack without a Herald. So it's really, really good that even though Cloud9 doesn't get the turret here, they basically get it to where now they can just kill it anytime a cannon wave goes up to the turret. They can just have their champions auto-attack it, and the turret will fall. So it's a really big victory for Cloud9, even though I do believe that Fnatic ends up getting First Blood turret on that Sivir down in bottom lane. It should also be noted that Sivir got a lot of solo XP, got a lot of solo gold. Well, I don't know how else you would get any sort of gold, but a lot of solo XP, got waves to catch up, too sneaky, and then Bwipo able to go back up into top lane. And so if you look at the gold score right now, Fnatic's actually ahead with a team composition that is fine with being behind. Ocean Drake coming up in a minute, so if you're Fnatic and an Ocean Drake's coming up, you basically just say to yourself, LOL, good luck taking that. Because it requires Cloud9 to invest resources into capturing it, which means they're going to give up tempo elsewhere on the map, and unless Cloud9 just came off of a team fight win, it's not something that they want to do, because there's a sense of urgency for Cloud9's team composition right now. They have to get gold, they have to get kills, they have to bleed Fnatic of their summoner spells, so that the ultimate of Leona and the ultimate of Lissandra become increasingly more valuable. They need to accelerate and open up the map. And then obviously Rift Herald should be a priority, but seeming like it's not. I don't know why, so if I rewind like a minute, right? Let's go back a minute. I don't know why Cloud9 hasn't initiated a swap already. You should already concede the fact that you're not going to win out with anything on bottom, and realistically you don't want to capture the Ocean Drake right away. So you could have just already moved your bottom lane into top even before this trade that we're seeing on the screen is even taking place, and try to get the leg up onto Fnatic and just move Licorice into bottom lane, let him get uncontested CS, let him get solo XP, let him eat the golem so that Graves can actually have priority on the left-hand side of the map and try to contest over vision. And you try to do something that way, and you try to play around left side vision control over River. Rift Herald is still up for about 3 minutes. You try to make something happen that way, but they're not trying to do that. And Fnatic's just being able to get away with matching everything across the map. Fnatic sending their bottom lane back down into bottom. I think this is actually a semi-poor choice because this lane is going to bounce back into top. So actually, if there was going to be a handoff point for Bwipo and bottom, it would have been now. Again, because you do not want to actually commit or invest into capturing the Ocean Drake. And then once your jungler just hands off the blue to Azir, you then have 4 members on the left-hand side of the map. And potentially you can go for a very cheeky burst onto the Rift Herald right before it would end up expiring, but we're not going to end up seeing that. So Fnatic take Ocean Drake, which is a pretty poor choice, and it causes an Infernal to spawn next, which now means that it is an objective that they did not have to previously worry about, but now that they do have to invest into capturing it, but they already have a sizable advantage, that the advantage that is then granted by capturing an Infernal Drake is so minuscule in the big picture of things. They did not need it to secure a game win, but Cloud9, if they end up capturing the Infernal, it means so much more for them than it does Fnatic. Mid-tier 1 ends up going down. It looks like Shurima turret was raised. And so now there's just this juggling phase. And if you're Fnatic right now, Dragon's not coming up for a while. Rift Herald is going to expire. It's infeasible for Cloud9 to actually get the Baron, even though someone would tell you, you know, just do Baron. So right now, all that Fnatic has to do is not let their emotions get the best of them. You sit inside of this area. This is all that you do. We talked about this earlier on. You never leave it. You just never leave it. You bounce your support between the 2 primary lanes where you're going to allocate the majority of the gold into your primary carries, which is going to be Azir and Sivir, because Jace is already being able to fare on his own, and Aatrox failed to secure a large enough advantage. And you do not fall prey to the Nayram like Afrika did. So right here, you're approaching 21 minutes and your Cloud9's team composition, and you're asking yourself, what do we need to happen? And you can't scale. You can't wait for Infernal. You can't just do Baron, even though someone might tell you that you can. You need Fnatic to be reckless. You need them to fight you before they complete more items. You need them to come out of their base and try to invest into luxury vision. And if Fnatic just basically recognize that, if they acknowledge that your team composition is so reliant on this, they just need to sit back and let you hang yourself. And right now, I don't like what, Cloud9's doing. They're investing a lot of resources into an economic tier 1 turret up in top lane, and they're basically hoping that Fnatic go full Afrika. And in doing so, they're losing ground elsewhere on the map. They're trying to play on Fog of War. It's not really working. Fnatic, now, they don't need to CS this. They're going to CS it, but they don't need to CS it. They can pull this wave, they can hold it up here, and they can try to generate a giant slow push with the Azir. They can CS it very slow. Where do they have to be right now? They don't have to kill vision here. They don't have to kill vision here. There's no camps up that they have to eat. They're under no obligation to eat this wave immediately. They're likely going to do so, but that's because they don't have a gun to their head. And Fnatic ends up going full Afrika. Yeah, Brupo recalling. He almost has teleport. Why? Why? You have a good bottom lane. Well, technically, you have a good bottom lane. The proximity to the turret and that minion wave is not big enough to hold a freeze relative to the reinforcing minion wave. You have a good bottom wave. Bottom wave is going to come back in to a healthy tier 1, right? You know that Cloud9 has to answer to the top wave. Cloud9 does not have a wave in mid. Cloud9 can't do Baron. Someone might tell you that they can. They can't. So they have an extremely shitty team composition for doing Baron. That's just number one. You could give them a fucking Mountain Drake, they can't do it, okay? Cloud9 has to answer top lane. Cloud9 cannot control that bottom lane will push back into you. Cloud9 does not have a wave to push into mid. If you are Fnatic, you back the fuck up. It doesn't matter what's in the Fog of War. You just don't care about it. You just let the game slow down. And you win. Because inaction is action. By doing nothing, you force Cloud9 to do something, and their team comp cannot force anything right now. Cloud9 needs to punish a mistake in order to win this game. But I'm just being biased. Fnatic got a little bit emotional. Alright, so, if you're Fnatic, Infernal Drake's coming up in 30 seconds. See that top lane? See the question mark ping on it? That's what I'm thinking. You can put the red on Sivir. You can... Alright, so... Red was coming up. This should have already been being leashed by Fnatic. Because they know that having control or vision of right side river is ultimately irrelevant. Because if you can take a defensive team fight and hold a phalanx and let Azir and Sivir play front to back, it doesn't matter what Cloud9 try to throw at you. It doesn't matter that it's condensed or it's a condensed area and that you're going to be like, oh, well, Leona has really good angles for everything. Or what about Victor Deathray and all this other stuff? Yeah, what about the fucking gigantic range that Fnatic just have on their champions? Are we seemingly forgetting that? Are we seemingly forgetting that Cloud9 has to use some of these variabilities in order to actually deal damage to the dragon? Are we forgetting the fact that someone on Cloud9 has to still be damaging the dragon, which means that they're going to be lining up like flies, and this is not going to be a dream scenario, whereas Fnatic is approaching the dragon while holding a phalanx formation. So anyways, the red should have been being leashed. They get the red onto Sivir, they approach the dragon. All is fine. Fnatic have priority on the Drake, and for some reason Caps is being a little stupid by leashing it. Cloud9 says, thank you, brother Caps. Absolutely no idea how the fuck Fnatic let that Infernal go away. And that's a really, really big win for Cloud9. Their team composition is so cheesy and all in. They need any help they can get. Now, unfortunately for them, Clown Drake is the next one that's coming up next. It is a second Clown Drake, so it's not the worst. Sneaky getting a little emotional in mid lane. Right there, it ends up being a 1 for 2. And now Fnatic immediately starting the Baron. And so I talked about this on the live stream, that I thought that the way that they end up doing this, if Brother Zazel doesn't decide to donate his life, what ends up happening is Cap stands right here. He has the cleanse. He's not getting locked up by Zazel. He's not going to get locked up by Jensen, okay? He stands right here. He does the EQ. He reaches Graves. He R's Graves backwards. And then they finish the burst onto the Baron. Obviously, there's an argument that can be made with Svenskaren's flash and whatnot, but there's so many ways for Fnatic to deny any sort of a Baron steal here. So, Brother Zazel decides to donate himself. Brother Jensen decides to also take a lot of damage. I like that Fnatic stopped DPSing the Baron. It's way too high HP. Svenskaren's not able to go in over the wall, and they end up picking up a pretty easy kill. Now, what I don't like is this part right here. This is a little too close to comfort. I think that they should have just... They should not have gone right back on immediately. Like, Caps doesn't need to take this angle. Caps can actually force them to go into the pit earlier. And they end up getting basically a pseudo-ace. Sneaky is alive. He's going and clearing out the wolves. But that is basically game over. Because when you have a Jace, a Sivir, and an Azir able to just poke you endlessly, it's going to be a pretty big problem. And fortunately enough, actually, the Ocean Drake that they end up having now plays a part. Ocean Drake is something I talk about. If you get it pre-10 minutes, it's really, really, really strong for laning phases. After 10 minutes, it ends up being basically a shit Drake. There's almost no universe where a siege or a slow push or anything is going to occur where Ocean Drake is going to play a monumental part in changing the pace of the game. However, if you end up securing the Baron later on into the game, the mana and HP regeneration coupled with the Baron buff on the minions and the fact that you do want to be sieging endlessly, you want to be putting on pressure, you want to keep them underneath the turret, you want to get chip damage, the Ocean Drake becomes arguably one of the strongest dragons to have, obviously depending on team compositions and whatnot, because you could argue Mountain Drake or Infernal, but Ocean becomes very, very, very strong when coupled with the Baron buff. So for Fnatic right now, they have a beautiful team composition. They have a poke-centric team comp that has Baron, has Ocean Drake. It's really, really good. So now, Azir is basically immune. Yeah, there's no way to actually get onto Azir with just one member or two members. He has way too much mobility and range. So right now, Fnatic just doing a 1-2-2, it seems. They don't need to force the agenda. Azir will get that turret on his own. Because, ask yourself, what member do you send to deal with Azir? You can't send Sneaky. You can't send Lissandra by herself. You can't send Aatrox. You can't send Graves. You can't send Leona, right? None of these champions can do it. So what combo can you send? You could send Victor Leona, but the problem is Caps has clans. So what are you going to do? You're going to send Victor... I mean, it's going to be Victor X. So it's going to be Victor plus X. So you have to send two members to deal with Azir. You can't just send Victor by himself because it's Baron minions. So even though Victor has Death Ray, he has Gravity Field or whatnot, it's still just not enough against the Azir. He's going to keep getting chip damage. So it's going to be Victor plus X. So Azir's already going to draw 2 members. So as long as the other members of Fnatic take this slow, it's going to be really good. Now, this is reminding me of TSM versus G2, that like defense video thing that I did. It was about 2 years ago or something, where the lanes are not pulsating evenly. And so this actually allows Cloud9 to have more of a chance than they normally should. So you can see this lane's right here, and then this lane is right here, and then you look down at Bwipo and Hylissing. And you'll notice that the lanes are pulsating at uneven intervals. And this gives Cloud9 more breathing room, but even with that breathing room, they're still finding ways to suffocate. They end up getting the turret up and top, and then they're forcing the agenda way too fast. They don't need to do this, completely unnecessary. Even if you end up killing Licorice here, it's not how you need to win the game. Now, right here, this was something else that I talked about. I'm pretty sure that Caps can actually just get this turret. Even if he would end up dying for it, I think that you still would get the turret. The death timer right now is... What exactly is the death timer? 45 seconds? So let's talk about if the death timer is 45 seconds. It's 45 seconds. Okay. So the death timer is 45 seconds. So if Caps were to hypothetically get the turret and then die, I think that it ends up being fine. Even if you're going to argue a shutdown gold or something like that, it basically has no purpose. Okay. It would take way more than 45 seconds for the members of Cloud9 to get a minion wave out of mid and crash it into mid tier 2 and then somehow have the wave actually survive some of the AoE wave clear that Fnatic's going to have available to them by the time they would end up getting to the turret. A Clown Drake is coming up in 47 seconds, which is not a dragon that Fnatic needs to worry about denying. Even though an Elder's going to spawn next, it doesn't matter. If Cloud9 end up committing to getting the Cloud Drake, it doesn't serve them any purpose because they're going to be locked up inside of their base. They just lost an inhibitor up in top lane. They have an exposed inhibitor in mid lane. And then obviously bottom lane is going to be the primary next focus of Fnatic. So giving up a Cloud Drake does absolutely nothing. So I think that even though this turret is on its last leg, even though they have poke, even though they can probably get this easily just with a cannon minion crash or whatever, I think just getting it on Azir, you're not losing anything. Yes, you're losing a little bit of gold, but you're giving yourself so much more freedom and access to Cloud9, and you're forcing them to have a much different concave when trying to defend the turret. Oh, apparently it's 56 seconds. Right now, Fnatic just needs to not get emotional. This is actually an example of Fnatic getting emotional. They don't need to do this. They have pressure coming in from top lane. They don't need to take this fight out in the open. That was a cute attempt by Bwipo, ended up not working. They end up investing a flash there. Actually, they invest 2 flashes. That's not a fight. That's actually an example of a team getting emotional and making a bad play. They want to end it. You can see that they want to end it. They're being impatient with their lanes. They know that they have added pressure coming in from elsewhere. They know that they don't need to take this team fight. This is, like, if you ask yourself, so this is actually, it's a very bad play. It's a bad fucking engage. It's a bad attempt. Yes, you can make the argument, oh, they can just end the game. Yes, they have a very sizable gold lead, some of which is being negated by the Infernal Drake. They're going to lose their minion wave. They can't actually penetrate the turret. Then they're going to be waiting 30 seconds for the wave up and top to actually get down there. They're not doing anything about bottom lane. They don't have teleport available. They're not under an obligation to take this fight. Yes, they have good items completed, but they could also just complete their next core items and take the fight and have an even or higher percentage chance of guaranteeing victory. And again, the stuff that I'm suggesting is if you want to literally min-max percentage stuff, which I think that if you have a gun to your head, you're certainly making those choices. Cloud9 was obviously in desperation mode when they come out of the base. The poke is just so insane. They end up finally getting the turret. And this is what I meant about like the way that Cloud9's allowed to defend with their concave. If that turret's just not there, this is an entirely different story. Which is why I think that it would have been correct for Caps to just die for the turret, if it meant him dying. I don't think that it needed to mean him dying, but if it meant him dying. And then obviously Claps shows up right here. I haven't seen someone conquer a land like that since Christopher Columbus, so he is alive and well. So, alright, so that is it for game number 2. Yet again, Cloud9 had a very bizarre jungle mismatch relative to the laners. I understand what the team composition was trying to do. Is it a team composition I would ever advise when facing stronger opposition? Absolutely not. This is not something that you would want to take up against stronger opposition. In theory, it sort of makes sense. If Cloud9 were against 100 Thieves or something, this is probably actually a nice team composition in the sense you get ahead and there's basically no coming back against it. If Lissandra gets ahead or Aatrox gets ahead or something, Graves can then just basically invade the enemy jungler permanently. He can continuously power farm while simultaneously invading. Victor just gets ahead, he blitzes around the map. Then they have the Death Ray to open up turrets and whatnot. Aatrox gets into the split push. They have multi-pronged engage from the Leona and Lissandra. The problem is that it is reliant on opponents making mistakes and you getting ahead, because Graves is being pulled at in top lane, he's being pulled at in bottom lane. He's incapable of being able to actually aid in mid outside of that oval that we talked about, and then Lissandra is already in a rough matchup. So, hate the draft from Cloud9 yet again. Glad that Fnatic don't find themselves, tying a noose around their neck like some other teams did against Cloud9 in the tournament, even though Cloud9 was not forcing the teams to, end themselves instead of the draft. So that's pretty much it. Now, moving into game number 3, this is where I thought that Soaz would come out. And the reason that I thought that Soaz would come out is because Soaz is an extremely clutch player, arguably the most experienced player at Worlds, I think, at that point. And I think that when Cloud9 show an aggressive all-in cheese comp like this, even though it looks very mid-rangey, I think that I expected or I anticipated an even more reckless team composition, and I thought that Fnatic would be on blue side, which plays into the defensive top laner, and I think that it would have allowed Fnatic to actually play more angles, but we're going to get in game 3, so let's go into that next.